We have this idea that intellect is going to solve all the problems for us. And yes, in the world with things, objects, people, relationships, intellect does play a significant role. However, with the challenges of life, it is not the intellect that brings peace, but the awakening of the heart, the spiritual heart, which means the end of conceptual universe or thinking. Thinking that is attached to ideas of what should or should not be, what is right, what is wrong. What is moral, what is immoral. Because these things, these definitions, these concepts change from time to time. Certain practices may be deemed as righteous in one period of time, whereas in another period of time or in another geographical location, that practice may be very common and acceptable. So, if we think of worldly concepts as the only reality and we try to get it right, we try to align ourselves with everything that we feel is right and should be, then we often find ourselves more turbulent, more emotionally upset, and there is no peace. But when all of this conceptualization ends, fully knowing that I truly cannot know anything in its entirety, it is then that there is awakening of the heart or supreme bliss, which masters have called awakening or enlightenment or whatever name you want to give it. So Ramesh Balsekar says, words are a distraction to enlightenment. Getting rid of conceptual thinking means enlightenment. When we are too attached to a concept, for example, me is a concept. I am so and so. My life is like this. It should be like this or should be like that. When we live in that time, in that imaginary future, there is a separation in that from what actually is happening right now. You see, what is happening right now is not in time. For example, there may be so many things happening while you may be sitting. There may be some animal out there fighting, biting each other. There may be a building being constructed. There may be accidents happening. There may be celebrations going on. Somewhere birth, somewhere death, somewhere happiness, somewhere mourning, sadness. You see, it is all happening in the now. It is not happening in time. But conceptualization happens in time, in psychological time. So conceptual thinking means, what I'm referring to here is thinking in terms of what is more, what can make me more, better, whole, complete, the version that I imagine myself I should be. What can I do right now? Can I get enlightenment? Can I get awakening and use that to make myself perfect? To make my to make myself live in a way that there is total harmony in everything, in relationships, in financial situations, and in other aspects of life. But you see, that again is conceptualization, an idea of perfection, which is a future projection. So you see, intellect becomes the last hurdle, because once the awakening happens, there is a crack in the structure of the personality. Personality which has been created out of concepts as a result of time. What should be or should not be. There is no structure to what is, because what is now, and now is not in time. But what should be, what should not be, how I should be, how I should not be, that happens in time. And the thing is, this movement comes about because we're not able to stay present with what is. Being present with what is means there is no me, because me is again time bound. Me either lurks in the dead past or in an imaginary future. So thinking continues with me. And I think that if I somehow reduce that thinking through different methods, techniques like meditation, japa, yoga, pranayama, whatever, I will be able to modify myself in such a way that I will remain in supreme bliss all the time. But you see, life's design does not allow for that. Supreme bliss is acceptance of the cycle of pain and pleasure. In the moment, everything, with total acceptance. So, one does not live in time. Living in now is freedom from time. The bondage is only in time. Time means conceptual thinking. To see that as an illusion, as the master here says, words are distraction, because words are formed from thought forms. Thought forms implies time. It implies conceptualization. So when I think that I must improve, I must become better, I must prove myself to the world, I'm constantly living in a conceptual universe where I'm striving, fighting each and every day, each and every moment in my life. And there is a constant stream of thinking which is exhausting me. Yet I am not able to look at this entity, me. I'm not able to go inwards because I have been so severely programmed to look outwards. I've been told that the solution is out there somewhere in the philosophy, in teachings, in thought. So I start worshipping thought. I think that it is only thought which is going to liberate me. But that thought in itself is division between the subject, the pseudo-subject me, and the object. An object could be anything. I want to become this, I want to become that, I want to become the ideal version of myself. Whatever we say, it's all object, it's all externalization. The mind moving inwards is the beginning of end of the conceptualizations. It is only when the mind moves inwards and questions itself, the one that is claiming to be the doer entity, who am I? It is then that the conceptualization begins to end. And with the collapse of this conceptual universe, enlightenment happens. Not that you become enlightened, but enlightenment happens, which is deliverance, what the masters have called deliverance of spiritual understanding. That there is only one consciousness, that is the source and substance of everything. But till this is just an intellectual understanding, the mind will fight. It will remain confused. And the reason why it remains confused is because we haven't totally been present to the confusion. If we are totally present to the confusion, we will see that it is really not there. Some of you may have had this experience that when you are in total limbo about something, about a situation in life, whether you should do A or you should do B, whether you should choose one or the other, and you're not able to make any choice because the intellect and emotions are at war, and emotions are winning because emotional center is very powerful. It is animalistic. So the intellect subsides. So when emotions and intellect, combine, what happens is chaos, where emotions are more dominant. The prefrontal cortex is hijacked by the animalistic center of the brain, amygdala. But it is only through amygdala that the breakthrough happens. When, despite all the discomfort, one remains present to the confusion and see that I am completely helpless and I cannot solve this with intellect. So, what can I do? That is the question. What can I do? And usually the answer is that I cannot do anything because I cannot get rid of problems that are created by the intellect through the intellect. The more solutions I come up with are going to give rise to more problems. And the result is that I constantly run. I'm constantly in entanglement. I solve one problem, there is another problem. Ready, waiting. But when I understand the nature of this confusion, this conflict, these two forces that are pulling me apart, creating dissonance, and I'm totally present to the dissonance, I eventually see that it's really not there. The problem is really not there. Mind is creating all these scenarios, and intellect is a part of it. Because when the mind says that something is not going to work out, it is doom situation, then the intellect starts working on that. Okay, that means I must do A, B, C. So you see, the undercurrent is emotional chaos. What seems on the surface like calmness. That is why sometimes we see people showing absolute calm on the surface. But then we hear that they commit horrific crimes. And we are not able to make any sense of why it happened. We always say, oh, I thought he or she was very decent. I never heard them, uh, speaking about anything negative or, behaving in an irrational way. And all of a sudden we find that that person behaves in an irrational way because there is an undercurrent of emotional conflict which was never addressed. So the pathway to wholeness and peace actually is through that discomfort, is through that animalistic center, when one is totally present to the discomfort and eventually realizes that it is really not a discomfort, but only the mind that is making it appear like that. Because mind includes the intellect, antakarna, manasbuddhi chit ahankara. So the intellect, buddhi, is a part of the is a part of the mind, which means it is divisive. It cuts into two. Now, intellect is required for daily functioning, and that is why it is there. For example, if you have to work on projects in your office, you need the intellect. If you have to cross the road, you need intellect. If you have to design something, be creative, you need intellect. So, I'm not trying to portray intellect as a problem, as something undesirable. All I'm saying is that it is part of that separative system which divides into two. So any solution that is born out of the intellect will have its opposite. That means once you work out a scenario in your life using the intellect, the doubt will also creep in. And that is why people who are highly intellectual often suffer from depression or anxiety. But when the heart awakens, it is altogether a different thing. There is no time. Without time, all that is there is pure light, the supreme bliss, the joy, in which everything is happening: pain, pleasure, agreements, disagreements, morality, immorality. The entire play is being conducted. An acceptance of the play the way it is peace, is supreme bliss. But we fight because the intellect says, no, this is not acceptable to me. It says, I want the outcome to be another way. Therefore, it formulates, it conceptualizes more. And then we feel exhaustion, we feel burdened, we feel burnout of overthinking. On top of that, we give ourselves another task to quiet the mind, which is another thought. So it is just adding on to the thinking. But we are not watching the mind in totality. We are not allowing for all variables to play out without trying to know the nature of variables. Why things are happening the way they are happening, we'll never be able to figure out. So once we accept that there are innumerable forces of nature acting on individual mind-body organisms, making them behave the way they are destined to behave and function, the conceptualization begins to end. It is only when we operate out of ignorance, which means half knowledge, which means the arrogance of saying that I know all the variables, that I know everything. I know why that person did that, why they committed a crime, why things are bad here. Now, in in this relative existence, we are supposed to act. So we can always, take actions based on the limited knowledge. But know that our knowledge will always be limited because it is born out of the intellect. Whereas the knowledge of the heart is pure knowledge, it is complete. So, when the heart awakens, intellect has no room, and there is true compassion in which everything is accepted the way it is, rather than living in the fantasy of how things should or should not be.